Edris, thanks so much for taking the time. Great to be with you.
Thanks for having me, RJ.
Maybe where we could start is Engage3 because the company does something really interesting that we don't encounter very often, which is honing in on the pricing dynamics, particularly in the retail space and the consumer space. And it's probably, everyone knows that price plays a role in a consumer's buying decision, but they don't know kind of the science behind it, or they don't know the psychological aspects, which are fascinating. So maybe let's start with um, Engage3, what it does, and then we'll kind of go more into pricing.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. Our founders actually started Engage3, and I love the play on the name. So what it means is engage with the retailer, the manufacturer, and the consumer. So those are the three that we want to support. From a retailer perspective, we help them measure what their price perception is, and we help them take control of it. So what you often see with pricing is people take prices up, people pay these higher prices for initially, and then they get frustrated, right? You lose the loyalty of your customers as a retailer if you keep just taking prices up. So our philosophy and our view is you've got to be competitive, and you've also got to understand who your customers are and what they care about and how that varies across different markets. So we bring in billions of data points that we go and collect. We apply our proprietary price image science, and we help our retail customers understand where should you lean in and actually lower prices significantly or disproportionately to show your customers that you're trying to meet them where they need to be met. Where do you need to be competitive, and where are there customers that are willing to pay more because the products are ones that they're willing to pay more for to help you manage your profitability as well. So it's all about sustainability, and it's about building loyalty in the retailer context. In the manufacturing context, we help manufacturers understand how do customers feel about my products? What are the ratings and reviews of my products across retail channels? What are customers saying? So ultimately, customer sentiment, and all of that then comes back and leads to how do the manufacturers help retailers set the right prices for their products in the store too? And ultimately, the goal here is how do you, in the long term, get to personalized pricing that actually helps consumers be met where they want to be met, even at an individualized level. And so the idea here is how do I, if I care about sustainability products, then how do I get offers for products that are sustainable to help win more of my loyalty at your store or for your products? If I care about budget and I really just need to optimize for my budget, how do I go and get the right deals in front of those folks? It's never one or the other, right? It's always somewhere in between. So you're trying to meet consumers where they need to be met. And our goal is to bring together the data, the AI, understand our customers' requirements from a financial health perspective, bring those things together, help them build sustainable long-term loyalty with their customers.
hmm do manufacturers adjust their pricing based on the retailer? So meaning, because I always thought it was just like, okay, this is the wholesale price. That's what the manufacturer will sell to the retailer for. But will they actually say like, oh, we can adjust our pricing for this retailer either up or down based on what that retailer can get at their location or online presence?
In most cases, the retailers set the prices.
Right.
But what they'll do is to your point, but they'll work with the manufacturers to, in some cases, help them think through how do we set prices that benefit the total category. So there was this concept called category captains that was very popular in the past, which is retailers would work with the leader in a category, and the leaders in the categories would come up with recommendations that would say, hey, if we take this strategy, everyone will in the laundry detergent
Mm.
category will benefit. And so that was a model that was very popular at a point in time. Retail has been evolving a lot. Retailer manufacturer relations have been evolving a lot. And so ultimately, the manufacturers and the retailers will have negotiations. Larger retailers will have better leverage to go negotiate for different costs. Manufacturers will do different things like deploy trade promotions, and they'll
Mhm.
use promotions to go in and drive better volume for themselves. One interesting stat for you to know is that every year in the US alone, there's $100 billion spent on trade promotions. And according to Nielsen, two-thirds of those promotions don't deliver positive ROI.
Mm.
And so there are a lot of dollars out there that are trying to influence purchasing decisions, and
Mhm.
it's being used suboptimally. And so the question is, how do I use data? How do I use understanding of my own customers? How do I use AI operationally to bring these things together and drive a higher ROI, whether it's on my base pricing that I have at the shelf that everyone sees, promotional pricing that might, be variant based on time, location, so on, or even down to more recent situations, more personalized offers that might go out to segments of consumers.
Hmm. And so do you work with all kinds of retailers, all sizes of retailers? Like CVS is like an obvious example, but like, is that type of company one that you would engage with?
Yeah, we work with the largest retailers in the world, but we also have single store retail customers using our data and our insights. And so those are, almost mom and pop shops, right, where the store is their business and their livelihood. And so it's actually it brings a lot of satisfaction and makes you have a lot of gratitude when you help someone at that scale because that
Right.
is their entire livelihood too. So it works on either end of the spectrum. It works with brick and mortar stores, e-commerce only stores, anyone in between, really.
Yeah, I would think like e-commerce is like a big market. I mean, there's all these like independent e-tailers, that are selling either their own proprietary products or they're selling someone else's, but that understanding how to price is very difficult.
Yeah, totally. And what's interesting is when we speak at conferences, there's an immediate assumption that, oh, you're taking prices to be more dynamic, right? In an e-commerce context, for example, are you more dynamic? Are you just taking prices up or down? What we've actually found is that if you are too active or too frenetic with their price changes, you're actually losing trust, right? Consumers don't know if I'm buying in this moment, am I actually worse off than if I wait a day or a week or a month? The airlines got a lot of black eyes when they tried to get a little bit too aggressive with dynamic pricing, right? So at conferences, people are surprised when we say, actually, when we come into a retailer or a new environment and we're deploying our solutions, we'll actually find that we might even recommend fewer price changes, right? We want to build trust with the consumer. It's not about maximizing short-term profit in this context because if you maximize short-term profit, you're going to lose your trust in your customers. You're going to lose your long-term profitability.
Mhm.
So our solution actually goes and looks at long-term profitability and lifetime value in that context and says, if you want to consistently build trust, relationship, and loyalty, these are the steps that you take. And I think that's helped us differentiate significantly because so many of the initial first generation and even second generation solutions that came along were focused on, hey, I can build you a profit tomorrow, right? And well, how do you do that? Well, you're going to raise prices, right? Oh,
Right.
if I raise prices, maybe someone ended up buying the product because I already went through the effort to find the products in the store and I'm at the counter, but I get sticker shock when I'm at the register, right? Am I going to, at that point, step away and say, you know what, I'm not going to do this transaction? Maybe. But a lot of people will still buy the product, but they'll remember, right? I was taken advantage of. I was not getting a good deal here. I'm going to either spread my trip out across other places or I'm not coming back here. I'm just going to pay more attention and be more wary. And that's not sustainable. And no retailer wants that, by the way. Everyone has good intentions, of course, but the point is that you have to invest as well, right? You can't just take prices up. And I think what's funny is that in this macro environment, right, where consumer budgets are tightening, there's a lot of focus on pricing right now. Retailers and brands want to do the right thing. The question is, how do I do that while still meeting my shareholders' requirements, right? And
Right.
that's a really tough challenge because what often happens is a retailer will say, I want to become perceived to be a lower price retailer. And so they'll lower their prices, but the consumers may not notice or may not give them credit for lowering the prices. So
Hmm.
then all they did was they just cut their gross profits and they look like fools because it looks like they did something that didn't deliver any ROI. And so then to make up for that, they have to raise prices again, right? So it's this challenge that they go through. And so the question is, okay, if you're gonna go and claim a position and be perceived as better value than you are today, then what are the prices and the products that are driving your price image? That's a proprietary metric that we have that you should really lean into. That your customers will look at and say, okay, yes, this retailer is paying attention to the products I care about and is giving me good value. And that's going to vary from consumer to consumer. It's going to vary from location to location. It's going to vary from category to category. And so ultimately, those that take both a short-term lens of reality, but a long-term lens of what's possible and bridge those two things together are the ones that will continue building trust even in challenging environments like this.
Is it possible to just keep prices fixed? For example,
Hmm.
Apple products. I feel
Yeah.
like you don't see like you're not going to burn time, like looking at which retailer you can get the cheapest pricing on for Apple products because they're all like they tend to be the same, right? Like, so you're just gonna buy it. So I feel like it
Yeah.
almost speeds up the ability to produce to generate sales by just keeping prices fixed.
Yeah, and that's a great example. And I would say Apple is a premium product, so they've already built in a healthy margin for themselves. So they're happy to sit on a consistent price for a while, right? When you're dealing with, let's say, groceries or commodities, right? A lot of people do that. And a lot of people today, if you look at promotional campaigns, are saying, hey, we have rewound our prices to prices that you saw 5 years ago, right? So there were some Thanksgiving campaigns around that a few years ago, even. So people are trying to do that in certain cases. But it's difficult to do when your costs are evolving. So you have the cost of labor going up as one example. You have the cost of doing business going up in other cases due to a variety of factors. And so some folks are actually and have been sitting on their prices. Tariffs are a massive situation too, right? And that's been in the press a lot. People have sat on those where they can. In other cases, people have admittedly use that as a reason to go and take prices up, right? Even ahead of the cost hitting them, but in anticipation of the tariffs coming in. So the short answer to your question is there are some folks who are doing that. And I think the folks that have more premium branding are one end of that that can withstand that. Then there
Hmm.
are other folks who are everyday low price retailers or everyday low price value brands who are taking that position and saying, we're still going to be the best value that you can find in the market. And they're winning because of that.
Hmm.
But not everybody necessarily is purely just looking for the lowest price. Some people want the store experience. Some people want the higher premium products. Some people want product attributes that are also premiumized or more expensive to procure. And so you have different retailers meeting different needs, and as a result, they need solutions and data that help them organize all of this complexity to ultimately come back and say, with all these costs that are changing, with all these shifting consumer preferences, with the things that are happening in my supply chain, with the shocks, whether it was COVID years ago, the tariffs now, or something else, how do I bring all this together and just determine what's the price that gets me to my profit objectives that doesn't burn my loyalty, but actually either maintains or builds my loyalty going forward. And so I think what you described is definitely a part of the strategy.
And your company has been consistently focused on more so this retailer and consumer space. Have you gone or thought about going into other areas?
Yeah, we initially started many years ago with grocery as the core focus, but we now do all kinds of general merchandise. So electronics, auto parts, over the years, office supplies. So anything that's a fast-moving consumer good, we now support. What's also been interesting is we've been getting a lot of requests to help people outside of fast-moving consumer goods as well. So we have customers that leverage our solutions to help them identify what is the market data on insurance products? That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Restaurants are interestingly asking us questions, and we have some partners that focus exclusively on restaurants. We're getting a lot of questions on things that you would expect, the things that you would expect that would have specialized solutions. Then there are specialized solutions, but they have difficulty procuring data. And so one of our specialties is we can collect data in an industry agnostic way,
Hmm.
online or offline. And so even if we don't have a pricing solution to help someone in a completely different vertical we've never touched before, we can help them get the data that they need to fill into that solution, whether it's a SaaS solution they're using, an AI solution, those are kind of converging. So it ends up being some combination of the two. So we're very happy to support people with data acquisition, regardless of what industry they are. And if they're in a retailer business where they're selling products to consumers, we can help them measure the price perception psychologically and then ultimately optimize the prices too.
I feel like there's a lot of price perception and association with value to when you're looking at clothing prices.
Ah, yeah.
Like the premium brands, I mean, you could charge like hundreds of dollars for, I mean, this has been well known for a long time. Sneakers or like, a certain clothing brand, it's like thousands of dollars to buy a coat. Where like who knows what the margin is on that? Maybe it's like 80% margins on those, or higher. Any thoughts on clothing and pricing?
Yeah, clothing's fascinating for the reasons you said, right? There's the brand side of it, and that you could just look at that on its own. Then you have materials, right? And so this isn't quite clothing, but I'll just give you an example. I was buying a new comforter for my bed, and I was looking at that. And I was like, well, what do I care about in a comforter, right? And I went and I looked online at multiple retailers' websites. And as a pricing guy, I nerded out about this a little bit. But now you can go and you can filter on materials, fabric, source, country of origin, and dozens of other things. And I ended up buying a product that was 100% organic cotton. I'd never bought a 100% organic cotton product before, but I was looking at that and I said, and I did some research and I went into Gemini, right? I said, "Hey Gemini, is this a good product?" And then Gemini came back and said, "I give that product a B score or an 80 out of 100." And I said, "Why?" And it gave me answers, and I kept iterating until I found something. And so in that context, I bought a comforter that was good for me because it didn't shed microfibers, for example. And so I was willing to pay a premium for that over what I might have just bought, a couple years ago. And that was really interesting. If you apply that to clothing, the same exists, right? And so coming back to clothing example, there was a big, I don't know if uproar is a fair word, but I'll just use the word uproar. There was a big uproar recently when people found out that they can go directly to some of the manufacturers in China that were creating the products for the premium brands, and they could buy those similar products or the same exact products at a fraction of the price.
Hmm.
Right? That caused a massive uproar, particularly amongst Gen Z, I would say. And so to your point, I think everyone has to step back and reevaluate what is my value proposition to my customers.
Right.
How do I think about my pricing in a way where, if I care about that audience, a very price sensitive audience that's paying attention to these things, am I taking the right position by being so premium relative to competition or relative to my costs? Do I want to come up with more affordable tiers of my products and expand my portfolio so I can meet that group? Or do I actually want to double down on my position and say, no, I am the premium provider. You're buying me because of quality, and you should be willing to pay because this is going to last you for 10 years or 15 years, right?
Right.
So use Nike as an example. Shockingly, my Nike running shoes have lasted me for the last 4 years, which is shocking because you usually have to replace them every couple of years. So
Yeah.
maybe there's something to be said about it from a quality perspective.
Maybe you're not running enough.
That's true. You know what? You called me out on it, RJ.
Yeah.
I set myself up for that.
So Edris, tell us a little bit about yourself. How you got to, I mean, you're at the CEO position. I think you started out maybe you came into the company at another position, but tell us a little bit about your background and what you did even before the company.
Yeah. I'll tell you about how I came in and then the before part. I was doing consulting work and I'd been building some programs around entrepreneurship with the head of the MBA entrepreneurship program at UC Davis in California. And I told him, hey, you know what I'm good at, you know what I'm not good at. If you know any startups that are looking for some consulting help, please let me know. And he introduced me to the founder of Engage3. And I met him with the intention of just consulting for, a month or so. And immediately I was fascinated as within 5 minutes of meeting the founder, we went to the whiteboard and he started writing out that problem I described at the beginning. There's $100 billion of promotions and trade promotions. And at that time, it was 75% failed to deliver a positive ROI. Now it's probably closer to 66%. And the econometrician in me was like just shocked by that problem statement. And I love the vision. And so a 1 month consulting project turned into a full-time job where I came in to help him build partnerships and think about strategy and build the team, which turned into, 10 plus years later, he and the board and others invited me to step into the CEO role. And I've had a blast scaling the company over the last 10 plus years. And we've evolved a lot. We've grown a lot. We've acquired a company in that period of time. We've gone global and we've launched a number of new solutions, and so that's been fun. Prior to Engage3, I happened to be at the intersection of retail technology and entrepreneurship. So whether it was a company that helped build e-commerce enablement solutions for retailers, or whether it was a company that did food services, basically for universities or businesses and whatnot. And I got my first pricing bug when I was given the opportunity to manage a bunch of restaurants promotions. And it was just someone who, again, studied economics, I had a lot of fun thinking about what are the promotions that people might care about at a Taco Bell? versus a round table pizza. And it was what shocked me, and you'll appreciate this, was there were the promotions that were economically rational were not the ones that had good response. I came up with promotions with the team that were like, yep, cool. I'm saving X dollars by making this transaction on an average basket. That got a mediocre response. But the moment I said, hey, buy a large soda and get a free taco, for whatever reason, the average ticket prices went up, the volume shot up. And so I got a completely massive response to those types of promotions. And that led me to realize, in economics, your core assumption is that consumers are rational, right?
Yeah.
And we are rational as a whole, but there's a lot of irrationality in how we look at things. And so the question is, how do you create value for people and create excitement? And I didn't realize that that would turn into this pricing career of being so passionate now about pricing.
Yeah.
But that was my first foray into pricing.
So by also saying they're not rational, it's more they're emotional.
Yeah,
So like
yeah,
that, like the
or
free taco I mean, who doesn't want a free taco?
yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and people were delighted, right? And they were happier with that outcome than the other outcome. So yeah, it's really interesting. Now, if you expand that across, the areas that we do business in, we have found the most shocking items to be the items that consumers really care about. So we have found certain items that, are not your first top seller or your 10th top seller or even your 500th top seller of your items. But we found that there are certain items that resonate so much with the segment of consumers that if you price those very aggressively, like you discount those aggressively, there's a subset of consumers that will notice and you'll create a halo effect where they'll say, I want to buy more products in the store because you took such good care of me in this context. And they'll even talk about it with other people. And so how do you find the treasure hunting around that from a data driven analytical way? But then how do you also, as a total portfolio across your products, how do you make sure that you're orienting yourself towards long-term loyalty? And it's fascinating. So if we had more time, I would love to dive into more of those examples. But
yeah, no, I was a big fan of economic studies, both in undergrad and MBA school, so I could talk about this at length. A couple of things I want to hit before we end the conversation. One is, can you just give us a sense for the size of the business today? It doesn't have to be or scale or stage you're at. It doesn't have to be in you know defined financial terms, but just in whatever way you can hint at.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we have customers across over 100 countries using our solutions. We've got offices. Our associates are, in the hundreds. So we're, at any point in time between 250 and 300 associates. We serve hundreds of retailers, brands, and adjacent companies.
Okay.
We raised our Series D financing in late 2021. I would call us a late stage technology company in that context. Our investors include groups like Wells Fargo and growth equity investors that you would recognize, as those that are in the space would recognize, and so on. And so our vision here is that pricing is such a universal problem, and there's so much opportunity to get it right, that we want to just keep investing and scaling and growing the company. And so our investors recently did an inside round that was a strategic investment for us to go and further push the envelope on how we're leveraging AI to drive actual outcomes for our customers.
Hmm.
And so we just did that a few months ago.